Hi, and welcome back to Mimi Leaks. In today's episode, we're diving into parts B and C of the complaint in the lawsuit against Vince and Linda McMahon and World Wrestling Entertainment, brought by 5 separate John Does. The plaintiffs allege that the WWE executives, through micromanaging, lying, and cheating, tolerated and fostered a culture of heavy misconduct. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more, and be sure to hit the notification button to stay up to date with episodes. Before we get to it, a trigger warning. This episode discusses allegations of misconduct involving minor children. Now then, if you're ready to learn more about what's behind the curtain at WWE, stay tuned as we break it all down. C. The WWE's culture of tolerating and fostering misconduct went all the way to the top of the company. Misconduct at WWE was not limited to Phillips and WWE executives Terry Garvin and Pat Patterson. It reached to the very top, Vince McMahon. The WWE 2022 annual report admitted that it could not guarantee that the actions of Vince McMahon would have a positive impact on the strategic interests of the business. Both the 2022 annual report and the 2023 TKO annual report disclosed that, in June 2022, the WWE and its board of directors announced that a special committee of independent members of its board of directors was formed to investigate misconduct by McMahon that had previously been hidden. The special committee determined that payments McMahon agreed to make from 2006 through 22, totaling $14.6 million, were not appropriately recorded in WWE's consolidated financial statements. Thereafter, the WWE determined that the 2 additional payments, totaling $5 million to cover up McMahon's conduct, were also not appropriately recorded as expenses in the consolidated financial expenses. Due to Vince McMahon's unrecorded expenses being material, and WWE concluding its internal control over financial reporting was not effective, they amended its financial statements. In January 2024, Vince McMahon resigned his positions with TKO. TKO and WWE also acknowledged that they may be subject to further inquiries and lawsuits due to Vince McMahon's conduct. Indeed, the culture of abuse at WWE was a potential red flag and political vulnerability as part of Linda McMahon's vetting prior to her appointment by Donald Trump as the United States Administrator of the Small Business Administration. The document states, in pertinent part, WWE's alleged culture of abuse background. McMahon's WWE has faced numerous complaints of abuse. Lawsuits against the WWE from SA accusers range from the early 1990s through the 2000s. Is there anything the President-elect's team should know regarding issues of SA at your former organization? Is it possible current or former employees of the WWE could elevate new SA accusations from their tenure at your company if you were to receive a prominent public position? The document further lists multiple allegations of harassment against WWE and its employees, including the following. In 1999, female wrestling star Sable sued WWE for harassment. Ring boy Tom Cole said he was harassed by several employees when he was a minor, including one employee who filmed him while fondling his feet and pleasuring himself, and another WWE official who grabbed him from the genitals numerous times. Superstar Billy Graham and wrestler Billy Jack Haynes said harassment by WWE administrators had become openly ridiculous by the mid-1980s. Former wrestler Barry Orton described several executives offering pay raises and career advancement in exchange for favors, and former wrestler Nicole Bass filed a harassment lawsuit against WWE in the early 2000s, including being groped and grabbed on a plane by longtime WWE employee. Like Phillips, Garvin, and Patterson, Vince McMahon and the WWE have been the subject of misconduct allegation for decades. In 2004, 2 flight attendants accused wrestlers of assault and harassment during an O2 flight which became known as the infamous plane ride from hell. They sued, and the WWE settled out of court. Former wrestler Tony Atlas said in an interview for the Mr. McMahon docuseries, "We would have been looked upon in today's society as some of the worst human beings walking the face of the earth. I mean, we abused the hell out of women. All of us did. You know, they were like a toy for us." Former wrestler Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson said in an interview for the docuseries, quote, "We continued to go over the line in terms of taste. There were a lot of questionable things," unquote. Former female wrestler Trish Stratus, said during her interview, quote, "The Attitude Era of WWE women weren't really considered wrestlers. Eye candy? That's kind of what they were at the time," unquote. Dave Meltzer added to his interview the following, "It was exploitive of women like you wouldn't believe. But that's what was selling, and the audience was guys. Teenage guys seeking women like that." In 2022, the Wall Street Journal reported that the WWE board had been alerted to a hush money payment by Vince McMahon to cover up an alleged affair, and additional similar payments totaling millions of dollars were later discovered. The allegations in those matters include the following: paying $7.5 million to a former wrestler who claimed that McMahon coerced her into giving him an intimate act, demoting her, and then deciding not to renew her contract in the 2005 after she resisted further encounters with him, per the Journal report. The wrestler and her employer reportedly negotiated a non-disclosure agreement with McMahon in 2018. Sending unsolicited naked photos of himself to a WWE contractor and harassing her on the job, leading to about a $1 million and non-disclosure settlement in 2008, and in 2006, paying a former WWE manager $1 million to stay silent about the McMahon initiating a relationship with her. 2 weeks after the first Wall Street Journal report, New York Magazine ran a story containing interviews with former WWE female referee Rita Chatterton and former wrestler Leonardo Mario Mancini Inzatari, claiming McMahon S.A.'d Chatterton in a limousine in 1986. Chatterton had previously made these claims in 1992, but this was the first time they were corroborated by a second source. McMahon reportedly settled her allegation for a multi-million-dollar figure. Mario Mancini, like everyone else involved in the WWE, obeyed the whims of McMahon, but now, as he puts it, Vince has dug himself such a deep hole, I'm just tired of it. "I can't do it anymore," he said. Mancini had heard a lot of stories about McMahon's proclivities. He was strange, brother. Mancini remembers Chatterton coming to him after McMahon had spoke with her. "I'm going to be over on the cover of..." Mario Mancini, like everyone else involved with the WWE, obeyed the whims of McMahon. But now, as he puts it, Vince has dug himself such a deep hole that I'm just tired of it. I can't do it anymore. Mancini says he had heard a lot of different stories about McMahon's proclivities. He's a strange brother. Mancini also remembers Chatterton coming to him after McMahon had spoken with her. And he said that she said, quote, "I'm going to be on the cover of Women's Day and Better Homes and Gardens and Time magazine," Chatterton said, unquote. "Who's telling you that?" he replied. She said it was McMahon. Mancini suspected something might go awry, and he said, "Oh, Rita, please, if you do anything with him, you're going to be gone." I told her, stay away from Vince. Additional allegations of misconduct against McMahon include a tanning booth attendant who claimed in a police report in 2006 that McMahon showed her nude pictures of himself and groped her, a spa manager who claimed that McMahon had assaulted her in 2011, and claims against McMahon of harassment of the divas of the WWE including former wrestler Ashley Massaro. During his interview for Mr. McMahon, the docuseries, Mr. McMahon acknowledged and did not deny his prior admission in 2001 to having marital affairs at different times. He also bizarrely described how he has computers in his head and sometimes they work against him. For example, he said one computer was talking to the Netflix interviewer while the other was thinking something completely different. When asked what it was thinking, Mr. McMahon said, "Something having a lot of fun and it's involving S," unquote. Quote unquote. As noted above, in January 2024, Janelle Grant filed a lawsuit against him. Former WWE executive John Laurinaitis as well, and the WWE, alleging abuse, trafficking, and more. Grant claims McMahon offered her a job, which she alleges quickly became dependent on a relationship with him, an intimate relationship. And Grant says that she felt trapped for fear of repercussion. In the relationship, which lasted from 2019 to January of 2022, McMahon put her through acts of extreme cruelty and degradation, including injury, as the complaint details. The suit claims that McMahon later involved others in their acts, including Laurinaitis, and that McMahon shared photos, video, and details with other WWE employees. It also claims McMahon used Grant as an incentive for an unnamed WWE wrestler to re-sign with the company. The lawsuit additionally claims that McMahon pressured Grant to sign a non-disclosure agreement in early 2022 and leave the company. She ultimately signed an NDA for $3 million and received a $1 million payment in February of 22, but claims in the lawsuit that she did not receive the remaining balance. The lawsuit also claims that the original anonymous tip to the WWE board about the payments was about this relationship with Grant. After Grant's allegations became public, McMahon canceled the remaining scheduled interviews for the docuseries. McMahon also later tried to buy the Netflix docuseries to prevent its release to the public. Following the filing of Grant's complaint, the U.S. Attorney for the SDNY announced a federal investigation concerning her allegations. Following the filing of the lawsuit, TKO said the matter predated its ownership and that McMahon had no day-to-day control over the company since the sale and merger. TKO Group also said via a spokesperson that it took the horrific allegations very seriously. As detailed in defendant TKO's 2023 annual report, on June 17, 2022, WWE and its then board of directors announced the formation of a special committee to investigate allegations of misconduct by Mr. McMahon. WWE later announced that it had determined that certain payments he agreed to make from 2006 to 22, totaling over $14.6 million, were not appropriately recorded as expenses in WWE's consolidated financial statements. All such unrecorded expenses have been or will be paid by McMahon personally. Defendant TKO acknowledges in its 2023 annual report that although the special committee investigation was completed, in January of 24, Mr. McMahon resigned from his position, and WWE has received claims and complaints, and it may receive additional ones in the future, including the January 2024 complaint filed by Janelle Grant that alleges trafficking and assault. TKO acknowledges that the cost resulting from the special committee's investigation and other ongoing and/or potentially new claims have been and will continue to be significant, and TKO expects Mr. McMahon to reimburse the company for $5.8 million, what they call reasonable expenses, during the year ending December 31st, 2023. And that's what he did. WWE's culture of tolerating and fostering misconduct, based on the myriad of allegations and lawsuits against executives Garvin, Patterson, Phillips, and McMahon, demonstrates that the leaders of the company knew or should have known about abuse permeating the organization due to their own participation in such behavior. Such a culture allowed Phillips to prey on plaintiffs and other victims, even though it was commonly known throughout the organization that he had a natural interest in underage boys, including a foot fetish, and was consistently seen with Ringboys at wrestling shows and outside of them, including at least as far back as 1982 or 1983. WWE, its executives, and the McMahons knew or should have known about Phillips' abuse of the Ringboys, but they failed to prevent the abuse because many of them, particularly Garvin Patterson and McMahon, were engaged in similar misconduct. D. Vince McMahon controlled the WWE through micromanaging, and he would do anything to protect the business, even lying and cheating. Vince McMahon knew or should have known about Phillips' abuse of the Ringboys because Vince McMahon controlled WWE, including ring announcers like Phillips, through micromanaging. In a transcript of a March 3, 1992 phone call between attorney investigating allegations of advances by members of the WWE, Billy Graham said as follows regarding Vince McMahon's control and knowledge of the company. And this is his answer. So the point I'm trying to make is, the reason I believe he knew about all the activities is because I believe he has tendencies himself. And Mel Phillips has been with him for 15 years, and Mel Phillips, and nothing goes on in the World Wrestling Federation without the full knowledge and consent of Vince McMahon. Nothing. And then it continues. Question. Do you think that there's any question in your mind that the McMahon is being in charge of WWF and the people that control the WWF knew that was going on? That this was going on? Answer. No question. They, like I said, Vince McMahon knows everything that goes on in the World Wrestling Federation. There's nothing that he doesn't know that goes on. There is nothing that goes by. There's nothing that is not condoned or okayed or supervised or even participated in by Vince McMahon. There's nothing. Nothing goes by him. Nothing escapes him. He is responsible for every mechanism, every aspect of the WWF. He is totally responsible for them. He even brags about that nothing escapes him. He is a know-all. He is a see-all. He is considered, as a matter of fact, some people call him Caesar. He is such a rude dictator. That was one of his nicknames. As a matter of fact, Chief J. Strongbow came up with that name. He called him Caesar, Little Caesar, because he was such a ruler and a dictator, and nothing would escape him. So, he fully was aware of everything. It was impossible for him not to be. Vince McMahon recently admitted to such a controlling approach, discussing his creative involvement moving forward after the WWE and UFC merger announcement. He said, quote, "Yes and no. On a higher level, yes. In the weeds, which I always loved to get in the weeds in the past, no. Can't do that as far as moving forward." End quote. Rolling Stone magazine recently reported that McMahon was closely involved in every show script, which was unusual, and the writers essentially satisfied his whims and transcribed for him. Multiple former employees described hostile conditions that permeated not just the writers' room, but the company in general, whether at the corporate headquarters or when the organization's shows filmed on the road. Enough female writers complained about their treatment to WWE Human Resources in 2020 that leadership held a Zoom meeting. They referred to it as a women's forum, but senior leadership allegedly told them to stop acting like middle schoolers and to not go to Human Resources with future problems. In 2016, The Ringer published a compilation of many of Vince McMahon's public statements, which included in the pertinent part, "The local guys were lazy. They weren't listening to the marketplace. We were so consumer-oriented. We never lifted our ears from the ground. We gave the public what it wanted. We broke the mold." From Sports Illustrated, 1991. My God, some of the things I have seen and have done. Mr. McMahon is the most reprehensible individual on the planet. Uncaring, a powermonger, manipulative, very manipulative, always trying to get what I want and being very clever about it. Art imitating life and vice versa. It's fun because some of it is true, you know what I mean? From New York Magazine, 1998. And if a cameraman is scampering and the cable's pullers not keeping up, I'll pull the cable. There's no job too menial. And that's from Playboy 2001. In an October 16th, 1998 story, New York Magazine called Beyond Fake Vince McMahon, journalist and New York Times bestselling author Nancy Jo Zales wrote, quote, "The WWF does everything in-house, from its makeup lady to its satellite transmission. Everything in the $500 million a year company is controlled by Vince," unquote. When she visited Vince in WWE's headquarters, there was a small tape recorder in the middle of the conference table to tape her. And Vince had told her, "As much as you will learn about our business, I'll learn a lot too. I always do. I always learn a lot about you." McMahon also said to her the following: "When you're on that fast track, you just didn't think about the other people who were being hurt." Nancy Jo Zales' story also quoted the WWF magazine as saying the following: "Whether anyone likes it or not, I'm telling you he's Vince, in control of this entire situation. It's a chess game, a human chess game, and before you know it, checkmate." Forbes reported in 2015 that Vince McMahon had developed a reputation as an overly involved owner who, for better or worse, often finds himself prioritizing his own agenda over the goods of his company. Notably, McMahon reportedly micromanaged the WWE announcers by using a plethora of unusual rules governing what language they could or could not use. For example, not allowing the use of hatred, never using "the title is on the line," and avoiding words like feuds and pro wrestling. McMahon also reportedly had a direct line of communication with WWE commentators via their headsets, and this very unique way of interfacing with the announcers had become legendary within the wrestling industry. McMahon used this direct communication channel to convey his specific expectations, directions, and even his displeasures during live shows. It was common for him to shout directives to the commentators, demanding they deliver lines and anecdotes or promote storylines according to his vision. WWE commentators have described such experiences. On August 2nd, 2024, The Ringer published a story about WWE ring announcer Michael Cole, which detailed, in pertinent part, that they made him change his name and that Vince McMahon spoke to the ring announcers through headsets, as they had called matches, telling announcers exactly how they should describe the match on air. Michael Cole said that McMahon cursed him out on the headset and had said inappropriate things to him many times. As detailed above, on the 1992 Phil Donahue show, former wrestler Barry Orton described McMahon as the king of the empire who has eyes and ears everywhere. A CNN article that discussed the history of allegations against WWE and Vince McMahon described him as a larger-than-life figure who, in his decades as CEO of the WWE, was known as such an intense micromanager that he barely slept, rarely took vacations, and almost never stopped putting his own spin on every single aspect of the company's output. Many longtime followers of the company simply assumed he'd die under that role, rather than retire. The article further said, "He was more akin to a king than a business executive in the world of WWE, his fingerprints on everything. He had molded in the history of his image, running most of his competition out of business and turning his company into the destination for pro wrestling. For almost 2 decades, he had a monopoly on the business." Multiple interviewees, including McMahon himself, in the Netflix docuseries Mr. McMahon, described his control over everything in WWE and that he would do anything to protect it, even if it meant lying or cheating. And they said the following. Dave Meltzer, who said, "Very few people were in control of a world. Vince McMahon was." Bret Hart said, "I love Vince and I have a lot of respect for him, but he was a guy that often lied to me and had let me down with his lies." Tony Atlas said Mr. McMahon protected the business. Bruce Pritchard said, "Vince is going to do whatever it takes to be successful on the business side." Former wrestler The Undertaker said he, Vince, had to do what's best for business, and that's what he always is going to do. Former wrestler and current chief content officer and head of creative for WWE, Triple H, said regarding a controversy known as the Montreal Screwjob that Mr. McMahon was so adamant that we had to absolutely swear that we knew nothing about this. He was like, "I don't care who asks you, you bald-faced lie right to them, and you say you knew nothing about this." This was a McMahon call. Shane McMahon, Vince's son, recounted wrestling Vince as a kid. After Vince pulled his hair, Shane said, "You totally cheated, you can't do that." And then Vince told him, "That's what I do in life. I cheat and I win. Learn that lesson. Sometimes you have to cheat." Mr. McMahon said, "Life's not fair sometimes. I don't fight fair. And you know, this is business and there is nothing I wouldn't do for business." He also said, "I'm in business and business comes first." And I wish I could tell you the stories, the real stories. Holy shit. Mr. McMahon said, "What I say a lot of times is totally different than what I think. And as a businessman, you have to throw things out there. It's not really how you feel, but it's controls and thought processes by doing that." McMahon said regarding when he was younger, "In those days, I could fight and love to fight. If you could do that well, now you're somebody. I was good at fighting, but they wouldn't say you didn't fight fair, you cheated. That's what they would say. But I would say, yeah, I won." Vince McMahon's decades-long micromanagement of his company, including over WWE ring announcers, and his admission regarding his knowledge of and gathering information about people like him, supports the fact that he knew or should have known about Phillips' abuse of the Ringboys. Mr. McMahon's willingness to do anything to protect his business supports the fact that he would cheat and lie when facing controversies, including the Ringboy scandal. Linda McMahon was in the thick of it, acting as Vince's wife, confidant, co-leader in running the business, and the leader in trying to conceal the sordid underbelly of WWE's abuse culture. In his interview for the Mr. McMahon docuseries, WWE's Bruce Pritchard described when he joined the company in the 1980s by saying it was Vince as his boss and Linda as the second boss. Linda handled the business, and Vince handled the creative side and the company vision. For example, regarding Tom Cole's allegations against Phillips in 1992, Linda McMahon stated during an interview that an investigation into Mel Phillips was taking so long and there was so much negativity happening with it that we finally told Mel that it was better for him and better for our company for him to go in a different way. When she ran for Senate, Linda McMahon attempted to sanitize wrestling and distance herself from the violence, the exploitation, and excesses of professional wrestling, but former employees allege she was at the heart of it all. Superstar Billy Graham once said of Linda McMahon, "She may look like a Sunday school teacher. Linda McMahon's hands are as bloody as her husband's because she is aware of every move in the ring." E. Phillips' misconduct, including his foot fetish, was abuse. Foot fetishes are intimate in nature. Multiple psychologists have noted that one of the most common fetishes is foot fetishism. Several books on fetishism have reported that 3 most common body part fetishes are feet, hands, and hair. Individuals who derive pleasure and arousal from feet can be described as having podophilia. Foot fetishism received a fair amount of empirical attention compared to other types of fetishistic behavior because foot fetishes are more prevalent than most other types. Researchers, including Sigmund Freud, have proposed several explanations for how and why people develop foot fetishes, such as perceiving feet or toes as a phallic substitute, the part of the brain that processes sensation people get from feet is next to the area that perceives genital stimulation, and linking a typical non-erotic body, object, or body part to arousal through positive feedback and reward. Researchers who analyze human behavior theorize that fetishes happen from events during a person's childhood, fixation on a certain object during childhood, and/or regressing by becoming aroused by objects or body parts that remind them of their childhood. Multiple reports exist of other pedophilic crime, such as the following: a gymnastics coach who was jailed for abusing children, a man convicted and sentenced to 40 years for exploiting children, according to a police report, a male perpetrator who had also been arrested a month before for trying to lure a child from a school, and a man convicted of a second-degree criminal offense when he victimized a boy, and that same man had been convicted before of similar conduct. Thanks for sticking with us through this in-depth look at the WWE lawsuit. We're nearing the end, and in our next episode, we'll cover the final pages of this complaint, bringing everything together and examining the plaintiff's concluding arguments. If this episode was insightful, hit like and please subscribe. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay informed.